Hello and welcome to another brand new episode of What the FinTech, the podcast from the team behind FinTech Futures and the Banking Technology magazine. My name is Paul Hindle, editor of FinTech Futures, and for this episode we're joined by Bivu Das, UK Managing Director at cryptocurrency exchange Kraken. Bivu, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Excellent. Well, it's great to have you here. Just to get started, would you like to quickly let us know a bit more about yourself then and the work you're doing at Kraken?
Yeah, sure. I lead Kraken's UK business. We've been established in the UK since 2013, and it's one of our biggest markets with over 300 employees and over 100,000 UK customers. It's a large part of Kraken's overall portfolio, and it's obviously a key part of our growth plans going forward.
Excellent. Sounds great. And again, great to have you here, and thanks so much for taking the time out to speak with us today. On the show this week, we'll be taking a look at how the crypto and Web3 landscape has evolved in the UK in the 2 years since the government laid out its vision for the country to become a global crypto asset technology hub. We'll discuss the progress the country has made so far and what more can be done to achieve this goal, the state of play when it comes to crypto regulation, given the news that new legislation could be on its way this summer, the key use cases or focus areas for crypto and Web3 technology and how the country can achieve wider adoption, and the potential role crypto can play in the UK's financial system moving forward. That's all to come a bit later, but as always, we will open with our news in numbers segment. This is where our guest has gone out and found a news story featuring an interesting number to discuss and get us started. So, Bivu, what have you brought along for us today?
So, in recent reports around the size of the prize, I guess, in the UK, there has been a number of reports actually, but the one I'd like to pull out is a Chainalysis report, and they do a fantastic report every year around the state of the crypto economy in the world and the transaction volumes in the world. In the UK, the last report, which was in late 2023, the number that the UK had in transaction volumes was just over 200 billion. That's pounds, so $252 billion. And that makes it the third largest, let's call it crypto economy in the world and the largest in Europe. And it's a fantastic number and kind of talks to the potential and the understanding of the populace in the UK. And also, when we get to some of your later questions around what the government are doing, what policymakers are doing, I only see a bright future for the UK as playing part of the overall global crypto economy as a result of that. But there's so much more to go. There's so much more to grow.
Given these numbers, then, how would you say sentiment around crypto has shifted in the UK in recent years, and what have been the main drivers behind that?
I wouldn't say it's dissimilar to the global population. It goes along with the markets and along with the news. Crypto has always been one that follows the news. The news follows crypto, whichever way you want to put it. But here in the UK, we've always had a population that have been quite open to new technologies and new ways of working and open to trying new things. And there's a similar pattern to here. So there was a large growth with the previous bull market, and then obviously when things happened a couple of years ago, the sentiment dropped off and the volumes probably dropped off alongside them. And the news also reported that, and it led to this downward spiral. But we're seeing that all pick up again the opposite way. So with some of the key milestones that have happened in the industry in the last year or so, the volumes are picking back up. And I think the sentiment is increasing and people are willing to try again, to explore again. And we kind of are seeing that market lead or kind of the global leading growth in the UK as well. So that's all really positive.
So just over 2 years ago now, the UK government announced its plan to make the UK a global crypto asset technology hub. How much progress do you think has been made towards achieving that goal then, and what actions have stood out to you in particular?
It's not something that will change overnight. So there's been some really good positives in some very clear legislation and regulations coming in with financial promotions, travel rule, these sorts of things, which help to steer firms in the direction of becoming fully regulated when the regs come in next year and get them to understand what it means to be a regulated firm. But it also applies that layer of security and for more investment to come in. And so becoming a crypto hub, it kind of isn't just about the participants in the industry. It's also about the investment into the industry and startups and starting in the UK. And I think all of the regulations, the policies, the discourse, the tone from the top really have contributed to starting to make that become a reality. That there is more to be done. There absolutely is more to be done. And I've been quite vocal about the fact that retail users can't participate in Bitcoin ETNs at all. It's great to see that now institutions can, but would like to see the next step taken as well. Otherwise, crypto is very global. So consumers and institutions will simply go elsewhere if they can't access what they need to in the UK, probably for the worse. So steps have certainly been taken. We're making good progress. The government are open to, and the policymakers and the FCA are open to feedback from the industry. And that is taken on board, which again is a very positive thing. So it won't happen overnight. It will be iterative, but certainly we're trending in the right direction.
So how has the regulatory landscape around crypto changed then in the UK in recent years? And how can companies working within what is still an emerging and evolving market ensure they remain adaptable to the changing environment?
So I mentioned a couple of the key regulatory changes there with the travel rule and financial promotions. Now, financial promotions is a really tough one for the industry to deal with. The way that any industry grows is by incentivization and marketing. But at the same time, we need to make it very clear. And I understand the reasons that a large portion of that has been brought in. These are the first steps, and crypto firms have gone from kind of zero to something very prescriptive. But as I said, this isn't the end of it. So it gives us a taste of what's to come. And if you've worked in traditional finance before, this is not unusual, but large parts of the crypto industry haven't. And so it is a journey to get there. At the same time, as I said, the regulators have recognized that it's not a copy-paste from the traditional finance industry. And they have to understand how crypto firms work, how they think, and how to supervise them in a way that doesn't cause customer harm ultimately, and at least for us, hinder innovation.
At the recent Innovate Finance Global Summit in London, Economic Secretary Bim Afolami revealed the UK is gearing up to introduce some new legislation for crypto and stablecoins by the summer. I mean, what are you hoping to see come from those proposals, again, with an eye to making the UK a more attractive place for crypto firms to do business?
Well, I won't comment specifically on the stablecoin bill. I've talked to Bim personally about a number of areas, not just around stablecoin, around staking, around custody, around the global nature of crypto. And all of that feedback has definitely been taken on board. And I think that the overarching sentiment should be any sort of regulation needs to manage the risk that it's trying to regulate for and protect consumers. It shouldn't be overly destructive to innovation, and it should be proportionate to the risk it's trying to manage. So when we look at stablecoins, or when we look at other, staking, for example, is a very unique product to the industry. And so that proportionality will be very, very key. But as I say, I'm pleased to see that a lot of industry feedback has been taken into those upcoming legislations, and hopefully the policies will be reflective of those pieces of the industry feedback, and will continue to iterate following this first round.
So how would you say the UK compares to other countries around the world then when it comes to crypto regulation, particularly the US?
I mean, you've picked the US, which is probably the easiest one to compare it to, because the US is regulation by enforcement, which I don't agree with, and most of all of the industry doesn't agree with. A lot of the US doesn't agree with. And so that's absolutely not the right approach to take. And so by the very nature of not doing that, the UK is in a much better position. How it compares to others, you could argue we're a little bit further behind. MICA is a few steps ahead. Obviously, you've got some in Asia as well. That's not necessarily a bad thing. We can wait and see what works and what doesn't work and try and fix for it. And hopefully that's going to be the case. And the plans are in place to get the next round of regulations out towards the end of this year, next year. And as I say, we're participating in roundtables, feedback sessions, consultation papers to help shape that in a positive way. I'm looking at what's happening in the EU and the feedback to that. And so personally speaking, I can see that there's definitely iterations to be had from the first step.
One of the big stories in the crypto space this year was the launch of Bitcoin ETFs in the US. I mean, what was your take on that? And do you see a similar thing happening in the UK?
I mean, my take is it was a fantastic milestone for the industry, and it legitimized the industry significantly. We saw the spike of activity following the approval and release, and we have RCF benchmarks business indexes and provides a pricing for around 7 or 8 of those ETFs. So it's fantastic news for us as well as the industry, and for consumers who didn't want to hold Bitcoin and have direct access to it. It's a great way for them to get involved, and it encourages participation and trust in the industry. As I said before, for the UK, the restrictions that were put in place about 5 years ago now, crypto was in a very different place. And so I think that needs to be revisited. It has been to some extent with opening up the ETNs for institutions in the UK, which is good news. So now we can have a UK Bitcoin ETF. That's a first step. Let's hope we can continue from there.
As you mentioned at the top of the show, sentiment potentially shifting towards crypto, not just in the UK, but globally as well. I mean, what hurdles then do you think still exist when it comes to the wider adoption of crypto?
So I think the biggest hurdle has always been trust and education. And so education brings trust. Education brings confidence to consumers and institutions to be able to participate. And that is the biggest hurdle for me. There is a level of discourse that needs to change with the media, with general conversation onto what crypto is and what it can be and why it was ideated and created in the first place. And understanding that and the potential of it is very important to creating mass adoption. The other one is user experience, and it comes with part of that as education, but generally getting into crypto has always been quite difficult. There's always been a number of hurdles, aside from knowing what you're doing. Being able to get your money in from pounds or dollars to crypto has been quite difficult historically, and that is becoming easier. You can on-ramp in Kraken very quickly, off-ramp as well. Participating in any of the products it's always been quite difficult. But again, companies like Kraken bring that experiential factor down or up, whichever way you want to put it. It creates a better experience and makes it a lot more simple, akin to experiences that we're used to. So those are a couple of the things that I would say will help to encourage that, as well as understanding the real use case, the so what. What can crypto do for me? And we're doing a lot of that education in the UK in this coming year. And what does crypto mean for me? And so look out for that, because it's going to be quite cool. And we're going to talk about, people can talk about altruistic benefits to crypto, which don't necessarily apply to everybody. And so there are real use cases that people can use crypto for, whether that's wealth building, whether that's payments, whether that's access to services that they wouldn't normally be able to access.
Yeah, and that leads us quite nicely into my next question, actually. Then, what would you say are some of the key use cases or focus areas for crypto and Web3 technology then? And what kind of role can crypto play in the UK's financial system moving forward?
Yeah, so I just mentioned, I think, the key ones there. So wealth building is probably the key one for the UK population. Do more with your money, essentially, and have actual full control over that. So you can access investment products that before you normally wouldn't be able to access investment products. It was to the purview of those who could afford a financial advisor or a wealth manager. And so you can grow your wealth and have full control over that with proper education and research, and that only becomes stronger. And so that's what regulation also helps, and education from our side also helps. And so wealth building is a really key one, and particularly as we see interest rates coming down, products like staking, which are inherently a lot safer than speculative investments and also contribute to the participation in the crypto economy, and are more passive, are very unique to crypto. And so staking is a fantastic example of how you can grow your wealth without having to try to follow the markets on a daily basis or day trade. The other one, which is a bit more broad, but it's still an important one, is cross-border remittances. And that's always been one of the key use cases of crypto. And being able to make payments in the same way as you make a payment from a pound to pound from one country to another, it hasn't, and in large volumes or very quickly with low fees. Crypto is already starting to support that and make strides to bringing down the cost, improving the experience and the speed of making cross-border payments.
So how have you gone about working to boost Kraken's expansion then in the UK, and what are your plans moving forward, both in the short term and long term?
So the UK has always been a really big part of our business, as I said at the top. We came here in 2013, we stayed, we doubled down, we have a lot of employees, and we're growing. So check out our careers page if you want a job. And we'll only continue to invest more in the UK. And the reason for that is because we see the UK population as a great growth market, because they are willing to try new things, and there's more of a positive sentiment in crypto, or growing, I would say. Also, the regulators aren't like in the US, which is by enforcement, and so we can only see that path growing as well. So for the medium and longer term, I can see this being a good place to invest as well for us as a business. And how we're supporting that, as I say, on the outside, we're going to be talking a lot more about who we are. We haven't really done a huge amount of marketing in the past. We've grown on word of mouth only and just by the power of our product. And last year was the first year we really did a big brand campaign, which you may have seen in some of the tubes and with Williams Racing. And we'll be doing a bit more of that in the UK. And as I said, talking about what crypto means for you. We started off at what crypto can be. Now, what does it mean for you and why Kraken?
So to finish off, what are some of the big technological developments then you're seeing in the space at the moment that you're most excited by?
So I'm a kind of a picks and shovels kind of man. Again, those who've been in the space a while, the use cases, so the shiny new products that always pop out just before a bull, I'm a little bit wary of. The products that the use cases and the products have been the same for a long time. It's just about being able to access them and use them in a safe and easy way. And so for me, what is exciting, things like the Denken and things like that cross-chain compatibility, things that will help to make using crypto a lot easier and a better experience. And so with transaction fees going down and on-chain, like so gas fees getting reduced and the speed of transactions, therefore the costs and the speed going up and the cost going down, that will help to get more people into it and really prove the use cases that it's like payments that it could be used for to be more useful to people as well. So these are the things that I think are going to help to legitimize crypto more and get more people into it. And so creating more efficiencies in the underlying technology is where I'm most excited about.
Thanks again, Bivu, for chatting with us today. To close out the podcast, we have our now infamous Fintech Jail. So this is where we ask for an industry term, buzzword, or trend that you've seen or heard enough of. Or, of course, you can advocate to free one of the previously incarcerated terms. So what would be your selection for this week?
So for this week, I'd like to put in the acronym CBDC. Not only is it a horrible acronym, but for those who don't know, it's Central Bank Digital Currency. And it's not just the acronym I'd like to put, but the concept I'd like to put into the jail. I guess the use case or the reason that it's being talked about is to create a government-issued digital coin. And I just don't see the use case for it. In fact, I see the opposite. I see it's relatively destructive. So for us in the UK, as if payments was the use case for us in the UK, we don't need it. We have a real-time payments network that is very, very good. So it's not required, and it actually brings more privacy concerns when all your transactions are going to be on chain and visible to the government. One could argue that it's in countries that don't have that speed of transaction that it could be useful. And for those, I would rather you have an infrastructure, which many countries now, emerging markets, are starting to do, where you use Bitcoin instead of central bank issued currency. So CBDC is what I'd like to put into the jail.
Yeah, it's a very convincing argument for that one. It feels like pretty much every country in the world right now is testing with CBDCs. Do you think it's becoming a case of, well, if everyone else is doing it, we have to do it as well? And do you think it's maybe being overhyped in that sense? And maybe, like you say, it's fixing a non-existing problem and it doesn't have that killer use case right now?
Quite possibly. I think when people realize either the restrictions to it or the downsides and the complications that come with it from a privacy perspective, you may very well get one created, but how used it will be is the question. As a consumer, I wouldn't use a UK CBDC. I would continue using my real-time payments wallet. And when we have the infrastructure to pay with crypto, I would pay with non-government issued crypto. And I think that's probably the case for the majority of people.
Yeah, in which case I'm happy to throw this one into the jail then, and we'll see if anyone wants to advocate to break this one out later down the line. But thank you so much again, Bivu, for joining us for the podcast today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Paul.
Well, that's all we have time for this episode. Thanks, of course, to Bivu for joining me. As a quick disclaimer, the information provided in this podcast is for editorial and journalistic purposes only and does not constitute financial advice and should not be treated as such. Cryptocurrency is a volatile and high-risk asset, and FinTech Futures does not recommend investments of any kind. As for FinTech Futures, you can find us online at fintechfutures.com, on X at FinTech Futures, and of course on LinkedIn. If you like this podcast and our other episodes, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, or your favorite podcasting service to get notified about future episodes. Thanks as well to Arama for editing this podcast. You can check them out at arama.tv. As always, thank you very much for your support, and we'll see you soon for another episode of What the FinTech. But until then, goodbye.